Welcome to the Deep Dive. So, you've brought us a really remarkable piece of source material today.
I think so too.
It's excerpts from a 1977 address by Sun Myung Moon, and it's titled Hosts of the Future, The Tradition of Love.
That's the one.
And this isn't just, an inspirational talk. It feels more like a prescriptive roadmap for creating what it calls an eternally prosperous society.
That's absolutely right. And that's our mission today, really, to unpack this ideology. The text, it sets out to define a tradition that's centered on this idea of eternal universal love.
Right, as the only framework for prosperity.
Exactly. Political, social, spiritual, all of it.
Yeah.
And we really have to look closely at how it distinguishes between, say, temporary interests and what it insists are permanent universal values.
Okay, let's get into it, because the address immediately sets a very high bar for what leadership is. It starts by contrasting two types of people.
It does. It compares a child to a true host or leader.
And how does that comparison work?
Well, it's a compelling opening. The child, the text says, has all this energy and joy, but their concern is only for the present moment.
All right, they're not thinking about the future.
Not at all. They look forward to winter because it means skiing and fun, but they haven't planned for the heating or the food storage. That's someone else's job.
But the true leader, the host of the future, they can't afford that kind of short-term view. They have to anticipate the needs of the whole.
And not just for tomorrow. We're talking long-term sustainability for the entire community.
And this principle scales up immediately.
Oh, yeah. Right to national leadership. The text poses this really sharp question to you, the listener.
Which leader is the greater host?
Exactly. Is it the one who offers a vision for the nation 100 years from now, or the one who can envision its well-being 1,000 years away?
And the answer is pretty clear in the ideology. The leader's greatness is, directly proportional to the breadth of their vision.
100%. And that really sets the stage for this entire deep dive. If your mission is to steer a nation toward 1,000 years of prosperity, you need a system that just won't fail.
Which brings us to this crucial discussion of tradition. Because in 1977, and I mean certainly today, a lot of people equate freedom with, just dismissing tradition altogether.
But the source asserts that tradition is absolutely necessary. It just has to be the right kind.
So what defines that? What makes a tradition essential and enduring? It can't just be nostalgia.
No, the source dismisses that. It has to be a good tradition, a way of life that actively leads people toward permanent prosperity. It's like a rail for the people to travel along.
Something that's valuable yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Precisely. If it only works for the present, it's already doomed.
And that's where the ideology gets really harsh on some of our modern values, things we rely on, like knowledge and money. The text argues they're just fundamentally limited.
They're temporal.
Yeah.
The source makes this very clear philosophical distinction between a material and a spiritual foundation.
So what about wealth?
Well, America might have great wealth, but history shows that wealth is, inherently temporary. It comes and goes.
The knowledge.
Knowledge changes.
Yeah.
What was scientific truth yesterday is obsolete today. You can't link East and West or guarantee peace with something that's constantly shifting.
So we need a value that can always climb up, something that stays true no matter what.
And that leads directly to the core answer of the whole text.
Love.
Love.
Yeah.
But again, it has to be the right kind of love. It can't be narrow or restricted to just your family or your nation.
Because that kind of love will eventually conflict with other interests.
It has to. So the tradition must be universal in scope.
Yeah.
Big enough to break the shackles of individualism and embrace the universe.
Yeah.
Only that kind of love has unchanging value.
So the leader who can guide a nation for a millennium has to be centered on giving, on planting something that will dramatically outlive them.
Exactly. And what's so fascinating is how this huge universal concept is immediately grounded in the most micro-level reality there is.
The family.
The family unit. The blueprint for eternity doesn't start with geopolitics. It starts right there, in the home.
The source is insistent on this. Eternal ideals, solid families, solid nations, they can't be realized unless they start with this foundational love.
Which then places these tremendous, really intense demands on family members.
Let's start with the parents. What's their role?
Their job isn't just to, shelter the child. It's to be the main vector for this tradition. They have to constantly urge their children to become better than themselves.
And the text gets pretty extreme here.
It does. It says parents must be willing to force their children in a direction which would make them better than their own parents.
That is a profound demand. It's not just about passing something on, but enhancing it, making the next generation superior.
But there's a critical psychological piece here, too. The children have to willingly receive it.
Meaning they can't see their parents as dictators?
Exactly. If the guidance is rooted in that universal, self-sacrificing love, the child will intuitively understand the purpose behind all the strict discipline.
And this dynamic, this loving structure, it becomes the spiritual cement for the marriage itself.
It does. The text is very specific about the child's role in preserving the parents' unity.
So if a child is living this tradition, how would they react if their parents were thinking about separating?
They would never be unconcerned. Never. Instead, they become the conscious preserver of that family structure. They'd proclaim, "I am your child. I am the cement between the two of you."
Wow. So the source argues that parents, because of their children, have no right to be separated.
That's the claim. The child's commitment becomes this active spiritual power that preserves the family.
Okay, so if the family is the foundational pattern, how does this love scale up? How do you get from a child respecting a parent to a citizen respecting a president?
Well, according to this address, true patriotism doesn't start at the national level. It's just the expansion of that family pattern.
So the love and respect between parents and children becomes the model for all of society.
That's the idea. If that atmosphere of sacrificial family love is established correctly, children then naturally expand that reverence for their parents to the nation's leaders.
And the text explicitly compares the president to a father.
It does, suggesting citizens should unite around his direction, just like a family unites around the parents at home.
And this leads to a pretty critical assertion about governance.
A really radical one. It says that the government itself, or, institutions like the State Department, they are not the determining factors for America's prosperity.
So what is?
It's the collective adherence to the right tradition of love. That's what guarantees success.
This level of commitment then naturally leads to what the outline calls the sacrifice hierarchy. And this part is pretty intense.
It is. The nation is always seen as a greater level than the family. So when priorities conflict, the greater level always comes first.
So if danger comes to the nation,
people must be willing to sacrifice their families. And young people must be willing to give up their lives for the national calling.
how is that not just seen as deserting your family?
Well, the source reframes it. It's not desertion, it's the ultimate act of loving them. By securing the nation's future, you are ensuring the spiritual protection for all future generations of your own family. It's deferred love for the highest possible benefit.
So with that kind of spiritual motivation, a nation will flourish regardless of its budget or military.
That's the theory. But then the discussion elevates again. If the nation is greater than the family, what's greater than the nation?
And this is where we shift from nationalism to God's vision.
Right. If individual nations just cling to their own sovereignty, they're missing the true vision of what the text calls the King of the universe. God's patriotism, it argues, embraces the entire world as one nation.
And the text says you can find evidence of God's existence by looking at religious philosophies.
It does. If a religion promotes unity beyond race or nation, if it urges loyalty to a universal cause higher than your own country, that is evidence of alignment with God's design.
Which brings us to the definition of a holy man.
And it's not what you might think. A saint isn't necessarily a giant or a miracle worker. That's all external stuff.
So what is it?
Internally, a holy man is defined by his capacity to link himself completely to God's universal love. And crucially, he is willing to sacrifice even his own family and nation for the prosperity of the world.
That's the ultimate sacrifice. And yet the address claims the path is actually simple. How can that be simple when the demands are so monumental?
Because the claim is that the universal formula is shockingly simple. The tradition of love you establish at home, how children serve parents and parents love children, that is the same basic mechanism for the life of a patriot.
And for the life of a holy man.
And for the holy man, the only thing that changes is the central subject. You're just applying that exact same pattern of self-giving, sacrificial love to a larger and larger sphere.
From the family to the nation to the world and then to God.
It's the consistency of the pattern. That's the simplicity.
And this one consistent road leads to happiness for everyone all at the same time.
Simultaneously.
Yeah.
The text concludes that God's desire is this one true tradition of love, and that implementing it is the direct shortcut to connecting all of mankind to God, to creating one happy family of man.
Okay, so let's bring this back down to the audience in 1977, the people who are trying to live this truth right now.
Yes, because the address shifts to place this really extraordinary emphasis on the historical significance of their current struggles.
This is one of the most astonishing claims in the whole text.
I agree. It says that because the audience members have a physical body to act, to sweat, to organize, to commit, they're considered spiritual giants.
Giants who are envied by
All past saints, all past kings, even Jesus. Their current actions, even something humble like delivering newspapers, are seen as extraordinary and are being watched intensely by the entire spirit world.
That's an immense claim. What is it about having a body that makes them functionally superior to past religious figures?
It's the agency of embodiment. The past saints and kings, who are now in the spirit world, they long to return to earth to fight this battle. Because only the living have the capacity to do the physical, necessary work of world transformation right here, right now.
A king in the spirit world would trade places to be a humble member with a body.
That's the idea. And inheriting God's love isn't something you just receive passively. It demands absolute commitment.
The text is clear. 100% commitment is required to receive 100% of God's love.
And that commitment means you actively seek hardship. You view suffering as an honor, not an inconvenience to be avoided.
Sweat, blood, and tears are required.
But they aren't the end goal. Suffering is the path to becoming an heir of God's love. It's the process of overcoming Calvary and Gethsemane, but, and this is crucial, doing so as a living victor.
You establish the tradition. You don't just die for the cause.
Exactly. And the text translates this grand spiritual mission into a very specific, practical, hands-on task.
Transforming New York City.
Yes. New York, in 1977, is described in the source as a place of total darkness, infected by corruption, drugs, casual sex, you name it.
And their job is to turn it into a godly city.
Purely through their deeds.
Yeah.
Starting right where they are. And this idealism is coupled with an extreme, almost military-like discipline and practicality.
Which means applying that sacrifice principle to daily life.
Right. For the greater purpose of the mission, the lesser has to sacrifice. So if you love your son, the text says, be hard on him. Discipline and hard work are the severe reality of this day-to-day battle.
And the work isn't just spiritual, it's physical. It's about laying a many-faceted foundation for the future.
A foundation that is financially self-supporting. The source specifically mentions creating economic infrastructure.
Like a newspaper selling ginseng tea.
And starting delivery services. Yeah, this focus on commerce is really crucial.
And what's the ultimate economic goal of being so self-sufficient?
It's highly specific. To reach a point where future families only need to work 3 hours a day to support themselves.
Only 3 hours?
And the rest of their energy and time is dedicated entirely to God's work. This unique economic structure is meant to perpetuate the tradition and shield future generations of the temporal worries of the outside world. It institutionalizes the mission.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we're circling back to the absolute core argument. If you succeed in planting this one tradition of the love of God, which is consistent, universal, and sacrificial, then nothing else can fail.
That's it. The unifying principle is that this simple sacrificial love tradition that starts in the home is the master key. It's the single formula for achieving prosperity and unification on every single scale.
Individual, social, national.
And cosmic. It leads you directly to God. It just simplifies the chaos of life down into one single repeatable pattern.
And finally, the text describes God's complete involvement in the struggles of those on this path. It's almost protective.
Very protective. So much so that if a servant, just exhausted from their duty, falls asleep on a cold bench, God would metaphorically wrap a spiritual blanket around them.
This imagery, this idea of total devotion and total divine reciprocity, it really raises a final question for us to think about, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, regardless of the cause anyone commits to.
True leadership, true faith, according to this address, requires the total absence of self-interest. It requires viewing suffering as an honor.
Right. And given that the address demands a level of suffering that requires God himself to step in and act as a caregiver for the exhausted, it makes you wonder.
What level of total self-abnegation and sacrifice truly defines a host of the future in our own modern lives? And maybe more importantly, is that level of commitment even humanly sustainable over the 1,000 years this ideology intends to chart?
That is definitely something worth mulling over.